This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the show. Tonight, my show is called Holding the Line, Teaching Through Term 2. Term 2 is a really tough term. It's not about pushing harder. It's not about reinventing everything, but it is, quite importantly, about holding the line, because term 2 is not the beginning. It's not the end. It's kind of in the middle. It's a bit of a long stretch. And this term is quietly determining whether the year holds together or not. I think this is the term that tests us the most. So tonight I'm going to be speaking about lots of different things, why term 2 feels different, what is the consistent message that we should have, what we can do to make it better, looking at how we can get through this term with the minimal amount of stress that we possibly can. So to start off with, let's talk about some honest truths here. Term 2 is where we have these kind of good intentions. We've started off in term 1. We have, high energy and we have high hopes for the rest of the year. Our expectations feel new. The routines are fresh. The students are still reading the room. If you're new to teaching or you're new to a new school, they're still judging you. You're judging them. Some of them are on their best behaviour. They know where the edges are. They know where the expectations are firm in term 2. We know the system by then, once we reach term 2. But one of the things that students do know is which teachers are going to bend a little bit, which ones can they push a little bit. It's not necessarily defiance, this. It is a bit of human nature. It is a little bit of teenage or child kind of psychology, because children do this. We know this. I work in a secondary school, so I deal with teenagers all day, every day. And they do test consistency. In the same way that water tests the strength of a riverbank, we are being tested by them as well. And our role in term 2 is not to start like building a new structure, because we do that in term 1, but it is to reinforce the one that we've already built, that we've already kind of put down and said to people, and those expectations and the rules and the policies and everything that have been rolled out in term 1. So this means that in term 2, we are reteaching expectations without resentment. We are enforcing boundaries, but without escalation, if we can help it. And we are delivering lessons without performing exhaustion, because we don't want to be burning out. So holding the line is not about being stricter. It's actually about being a bit steadier. So when we look at term 2, let's start off with behaviour. Consistency over intensity. I'm not talking about the behaviour that's dramatic. I'm not talking about, the ones that might slam a few doors and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not talking about those dramatic moments. I'm not talking about high profile behaviour moments. I'm talking about the daily ones, the low level disruption, the muttered comments under their breath at you or at each other, the slow starts, I forgot my pen, I forgot my PE kit, I forgot my tie, my school shoes broke. It's all of those things. Now, term 2 is where we can sometimes feel a bit tempted to do one of two things. We either clamp down harder than necessary, so we double down on the rules and the expectations, or we might go the other way and let the small things slide to preserve the energy, because we know we're going to need this energy, because term 2 inevitably can be 8 weeks long. It's a long old term. But in actual fact, neither of those actually truly serves us as teachers. Holding the line is more about you addressing the behaviour that you said you would address, you follow the system that you agreed to follow, and you respond the same way on a tired Thursday or Friday as you would do on a Monday morning when you're fresh and ready to go. It's not about being loud. It's not about, being emotional about it. It's simply just consistency and holding that line, holding on to what we know works, which is what we put down in those boundaries in term 1. We know that students feel safest when adults are predictable. And there's lots of science that suggests this, and have proven this actually, that children feel safe when they can predict what's happening in front of them. They actually like routine, they like habits, and they like the boundaries. They like to know where they are, because that makes them feel safe. And it's when they don't feel safe that's when we start to see that sort of behaviour. They might not thank you for enforcing those boundaries and having those high expectations, but they will trust you because of it. And that's why I think term 2 just pinches us a little bit harder. So what does consistency look like in the classroom? What I'd like you to do, I'm just going to place a few ads in a moment, and I want you just to have a think about this. What does consistency look like in any classroom, whether it's primary or secondary or AP setting or a school with SEND needs, whatever it might be? What does it actually look like? If you've got any questions, do pop them in the chat. I've got my own questions, which I'm kind of going to be answering as well as I go through. But have a think about that, have a ponder, and we're going to discuss it after these ads.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Teachers, have you heard of Bet UK 2026? It's the world's biggest education and technology event, and it's completely free for educators. From keynote speakers and panel sessions to CPD accredited workshops and networking, Bet UK 2026 is where educators from across the globe come together to share ideas, spark inspiration, and find solutions that fuel our mission to drive better education globally. Get your free ticket today at betshow.com.
Okay, so what does consistency look like in a classroom? So, as teachers, we say we're consistent. We say it all the time. I definitely say it. We believe we're consistent, but are we consistent? Are we consistent all day, every day? Consistency means the same rules, every lesson, every class, every pupil, no exceptions, no wobbling, no kind of questioning yourself. It's no negotiating, especially with year 9s at 2:47 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. It's not negotiating. It's just gently putting those same rules in place every day. But is that true? Because if we say the rule is silence during instructions or independent learning, for example, sometimes do we let it slide if we're nearly there? If there's 30 seconds left on the timer, or if it is a Friday after, lunchtime, or if we're having a tired day, do we think to ourselves, well, maybe, independent learning, maybe, this silence I've asked for, I've just seen them talk, maybe I won't pick them up this one time. Or do we think it's going to take longer to challenge this than it actually is to just carry on? Like, what's going through our head? And this is, I'm pondering all this, I'm questioning all this. I'm not saying this happens, but is that inconsistency if we do think that? Or is it actually just being human? Is consistency about following through? If we warn it, we should do it. If we say last chance, it is actually the last chance, not the last chance before the last chance, etc. There's an old saying, and I don't know who says it, but I've heard it a lot in education: what you permit, you promote. So if you permit them to speak over that one independent learning task, or something else that you're doing in silence, and you allow that little bit of low level disruption from the couple of good kids at the back, then are you promoting that? Are you saying subconsciously to the other children in class, actually, sometimes I will permit this? And then there's the flip side. If those quiet kids normally who don't speak do start speaking in the silent time, or when you're speaking and you don't want to speaking over you, do you always challenge those good students? And I'll say good in sort of air quotes here. Do you challenge them, or do you let that slide because they're good kids? And then there's that kind of idea of the other children seeing it as unfair, and this unfairness and the injustice of it all. But consistency isn't about being harsh. It's actually about being trustworthy. It's about putting it out there in the lessons, in the classroom, that you can be trusted. They don't need us to be strict. The children need us to be predictable. They need to know that when they come into any classroom that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. If I do X, Miss will do Y every single time. And I was having a chat today with my colleagues about term 2. And it was that exact thing, is do we challenge every child every time? Or do we have those times where we think, oh, they've got a difficult parent, or, oh, they were really good, they've been good all year, they're a good kid, whatever it might be, their reputation, etc. Is that element there? Do we let tiredness sort of predict? But let's be honest here. Consistency doesn't mean that we deliver every lesson like we're some sort of AI robot and we're just sort of, going through a script. It doesn't mean that we're not human and we lose our voice on a period 5 on a Friday, and that we never sigh or, internally or in our heads, roll our eyes a little bit when someone asks to go to the toilet again for the 15th time, because we are only human. But consistency doesn't mean that we shouldn't be smiling and we shouldn't be happy and helpful. Again, I had another conversation with an ECT recently, and I was talking about when I first started teaching, which was quite a few years ago now, and it was the university lecturer who said, I was always taught never to smile before Christmas because it shows some sort of weakness or anything like that. But, that's not what consistency is. And I certainly wouldn't say that to any ECT now, because we are human. We are allowed to actually smile. Sometimes we do have to plaster it on, and we're going to talk a little bit later about, that kind of actor moment that we have to be in the classroom sometimes. But, consistency doesn't mean that we don't joke or adapt, etc., etc. Maybe actually it's just very calm, and, expectations are the same. Routines are the same. There's a calm response every time, even if that means we have to take, a bit of a breath before we speak. It's the same belief system that every pupil can meet the standard. And I think that is a really important point, because even when we're really tired, and even when they're pushing a little bit, because they might be tired as well, even when it would be easier not to bother giving them a warning or a demerit or whatever it is your school does, sometimes it flashes in your mind, actually, if I give them this warning or if I give them this detention, I've then got to go on, I've got to sign in and put it on there, and then I'm going to have the parent ring in or whatever it might be. And that flashes through your mind in that very moment. But actually, it's really, really important, because the truth of it is students don't experience our intentions. They experience our habits. I'm just going to say that again. They don't experience our intentions, what we intend to do, what we think we're doing in our heads. They experience our habits that we do day in, day out. It's not something that we announce. We don't announce that we're doing this consistently with every child in every part of the school. It's just something that we demonstrate quietly, calmly, confidently. And I think that's what it really looks like in the classroom, is being consistent, it's being fair, and it's allowing those children to feel safe and feel that they can trust you, and know that when they come into your classroom, they're all going to be treated the same, regardless of whether it's a Friday afternoon or a Monday morning, regardless of whether it's after lunch or after break or after assembly, that they are all going to be treated exactly the same. And that might not be perfection. It's not rigidity, and it's not shouting louder than they are. It actually just looks like me, you, the people, the colleagues that we work with. It's about showing up. It's about holding the line. And it's about doing the small things again and again and again. So I'd invite you to give me some questions in the chat if you're thinking of any questions or you want to converse a little bit. Do let me know. I'm going to play the adverts again now from our sponsors, and then when we come back after the adverts, we're going to talk about when energy dips for teachers. What happens when we are less inspired about our craft? See you in a few moments.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Teachers, have you heard of Bet UK 2026? It's the world's biggest education and technology event, and it's completely free for educators. From keynote speakers and panel sessions to CPD accredited workshops and networking, Bet UK 2026 is where educators from across the globe come together to share ideas, spark inspiration, and find solutions that fuel our mission to drive better education globally. Get your free ticket today at betshow.com.
Okay, and I'm back in sunny Kent this evening. I'm very happy to see you in the late show with me, Sarah Wilkinson-Crute. We are talking today about holding the line, teaching through term 2. The reason I wanted to do this topic today was because we've just finished term 2. A vast majority of schools broke up today, or at least in Kent they did. I'm not sure where you guys live, but in Kent, majority of schools broke up today. And everywhere I looked at 12:30 when the children left, we had a lot of tired teachers and a lot of very grateful faces and a lot of sighs, and they were very happy that it was the end of term. But what's interesting about term 2 is what makes it pinch, what makes it hurt that little bit more than maybe term 6, which arguably at the end of an academic year you would expect to be a little bit more tiring. But there's something about term 2 where it just catches up with you. It's dark, it's rainy, it's cold, and all of our tensions are on high alert, and temper's afraid a little bit. So by term 2, teaching becomes less about inspiration and more about the craft of teaching, of going through those routines. Term 2 is about where the clear explanations matter more than the elaborate activities that you might have started with in term 1. Routines save more time than innovation. So we're not starting from scratch in term 2. We've put all those boundaries down. And if you've been in a school for a long time, you're reiterating it over and over again. This strong modelling outperforms the endless tasks that you might have done in term 1. You don't need to entertain the students as such or try and get their buy-in. It's about engaging them. And you need to make that thinking unavoidable so that they're not in that passive learning phase, which we know, certainly for teenagers, they definitely have that passive learning head on sometimes, especially if it's cold. So holding the line in teaching means sticking to the curriculum sequence. It means trusting the lesson structure. It means revisiting knowledge without apologising for the repetition, because you're going to repeat yourself a lot in term 2. This is the term where retrieval feels dull, where they start to think, oh, I've done this over and over again, the starter tasks, the quotations. I'm an English teacher, so I speak a lot about English. The quotations that they're going through again and again. The progress in term 2 is often quite quiet as well, but quiet progress is still progress. They might not be going up on this upward trend really quickly, but they should still be progressing. In fact, they will be, but it will be very sedated and it will go under the radar a little bit in term 2. But let's not forget the emotional load of term 2. This is the energy that it kind of zaps you in term 2. It carries a unique emotional weight, I think. And I'd really love your opinions on this. But as I said before, in term 6, when there's another 8-week term, it's term 2, term 6 seem to be the longest term. So they're 8 weeks long, roughly. And it feels like term 2 is longer. I don't know what it is. You're no longer running on the adrenaline that you would have had when you started in term 1. The finish line feels ages away because, people talk about Christmas and you think, oh God, I've got to buy for family. I've got to try and organise Christmas as well. Every day requires you to be deliberately professional. You deliberately need to think about your teaching because you get more tired and more tired and more tired. And as when the clocks go back during, the half term, and you come back and it's ever so dark, you go into work in the darkness, you go home in the darkness. It's really hard to find that motivation. And yet, this is actually, I would argue, this is where the impact deepens, because you're not kind of bringing out all those things that you've been reading about all summer, if you have been reading all summer about fandabidozy tasks, like I do, which is pretty sad. And you want to think, I'm going to try that out. You're not kind of doing that in term 2. It's all about that consistency and holding that line. You're not taking the testing the students do personally anymore because you've come back. It's almost like this sigh of relief when you come back after October because you're like, well, I know them now. I know my classes. I know the names of the people in the class. I've done the seating plans. I might have shuffled them a couple of times. It's not mistaking tiredness for failure or confusing steadiness for stagnation. It is acceptable to teach without teaching spectacularly in term 2. It is acceptable to repeat yourself numerous times. It is acceptable to conserve your energy. Professional endurance is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters reliably. So that's what I mean when I'm saying holding the line here, is that keep going, that consistency over and over again, and the children will thank you for it in the end. So there is a bit of an argument here, and I've spoken, in preparation for this show. I've been talking to a lot of people at my workplace, fellow teachers in other subjects, and they say, well, we're professionals. This is just a part of teaching. This is just how it is. And yeah, I get that teaching is, and always has been, emotionally demanding. You manage moods of the children before the content. You absorb the frustration of their previous lesson or their friendship falling out in break time and lunchtime before you deliver any feedback or lesson time. And you stay calm so that others don't have to. So those children don't have to because you're the calm one. None of that is new. But what I really do think that term 2 does is expose it more clearly. Because you know your classes, you know which students are struggling generally, you know which routines are a bit fragile and you might need to go over them. You know which names come through with a sigh, even if you never say it out loud. So even if you think to yourself, well, such and such is in today and you think this is going to be a tough lesson, we never say those sorts of things out loud. We just kind of go through it. But that's your experience. So your experience is important. You're just doing the job well. But there is something about term 2 that just hits very differently. Term 1, adrenaline, as I said before, does a lot of the emotional work for you. Adrenaline when you first come back and that renewed inspiration and motivation. So, yeah, this is my year. I'm going to get lots of kids over the line, getting those grade 4s. I'm going to help that kid read. I'm going to help that kid, see that there's more to life than living in the town they're living in, etc., etc. And in term 3 and 4, and even term 6, the finish line, you can see it. So in term 6, you know that the year is coming to an end. The exams have been taken. Year 11 have gone. Year 13 have gone. And so you think to yourself, well, the finish line is nearly there. I can see it. But term 2, it's not a novelty anymore. There is no countdown, really. It's just the middle, the long, long middle. And you constantly repeat yourself. The same behaviour conversation, again and again. The same students sometimes. Sometimes you get really bored of doing it. The same concerns about certain pupils, still unresolved sometimes. The same expectations with less energy to meet them because you get more and more tired. You're not overwhelmed in a dramatic way. You're quietly loaded. And I quite like that term, quietly loaded. I heard someone say that to me a couple of weeks back. they're not overwhelmed as such. They can't really put their finger on it, but they're kind of loaded. They've got all this information they need to give to people. Their glass is full. And that's really much harder to notice and much harder to admit as well. When we look at teacher wellbeing, for example, and I think I've talked about this before on a previous show of mine, the Teacher Wellbeing Index in 2025 came out very recently. And in that, 77% of all staff said they experienced physical, psychological, or behavioural symptoms due to their work or their overwork. 76% of all staff were saying that they were stressed. These are teachers. 29% of staff have considered leaving the profession due to the pressures on their mental health. And of those 29%, 66% of those have considered it in the last year. So term 2 is one of those kind of exposure moments, I think, when you kind of, if you go to a different school in September and you're very excited about starting, you have your first term, and then the second term you start to question whether you made the right decision, etc. But when we think about term 2, it does have an end. I know we have Christmas at the end of it, and I think that sometimes doesn't help with children because they get very excited or not. Some children get very anxious, and that's the thing. We're dealing with the anxieties of some students that really don't want to be off school for 2 weeks. They're really not looking forward to Christmas. And then those children that really are, and they're bouncing around, they're singing Christmas songs, and they're trying to sneak in the Christmas hat, etc. We've got parents' expectations of what they expect of us. We've got colleagues pressurising us to help out here and help out there. We've got the just leadership decisions of SLT and middle leadership. And, of course, our own standards that we're trying to maintain. And to be honest with you, I don't know about you guys, but they're usually heavier on me than all of those other things that I've just said. My own expectations are usually a lot higher than anyone else's. So we smile at the door. We reset after every lesson, we shake it off, we give students a fresh start even when we desperately want one for ourselves. And the emotional load isn't about these big moments, it's about the accumulation of the small ones. All of these little moments that we have throughout the day and throughout the months and throughout the terms and throughout the year. So what is the answer to this then? Do we push on? Do we pause? 63% of staff in the same wellbeing index said that they had too many things to do without enough time to do it. So do we pause or do we push on? But this is kind of when I really look at myself and I think to myself, you know, if we lower expectations, are we doing it to protect ourselves or do we hold the line and power through? And when I kind of contemplate this and I speak to my colleagues about it, it's actually neither. Holding the line in term 2 doesn't mean carrying everything alone and on your own. It means recognising that feeling tired doesn't mean that you're failing. Needing consistency is not a lack of compassion. It is compassion itself. Being consistent is being compassionate. It means simplifying things where possible. Hold the behaviour expectations, follow the behaviour policy, being kind where it counts, and remembering that calm, predictable teaching is emotionally efficient for you and for those children. So I've got a few questions in the chat which I'm going to have a little look at, but first we're going to go over to the news, and we're going to carry on with this debate afterwards. I'm going to have a look at some of the questions that are coming out. Just have a little think, just the final thought that I want you to think about while we go into the news. If term 2 feels emotionally heavy, that's not weakness, in my opinion. It's not weakness to feel that emotional load. It's awareness. It's awareness of your limits. It's awareness that you need help or perhaps that you need rest. The emotional load of teaching doesn't mean that you're doing things wrong. It means that you're doing a lot of things right, actually, for a lot of people, for parents, for students, for leadership. And if you think about this, if today all you managed to do was stay steady, calm, and consistent, that's not just enough. That's actually professional endurance. So let's listen to the news now, and we'll be back after this news broadcast.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Teachers, have you heard of Bet UK 2026? It's the world's biggest education and technology event, and it's completely free for educators. From keynote speakers and panel sessions to CPD accredited workshops and networking, Bet UK 2026 is where educators from across the globe come together to share ideas, spark inspiration, and find solutions that fuel our mission to drive better education globally. Get your free ticket today at betshow.com.
Hey teachers, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping in to tell you about Teachers Talk Connect 2026. We are back with our amazing big annual CPD and networking extravaganza in Manchester. It's on Saturday the 14th of March and tickets are completely free for teachers. Just head over to ttradio.org/Connect 2026 to grab your ticket today. We can't wait to see you there.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC covers the news that government has promised to create 50,000 more places for children with SEND in mainstream schools in England. It says it plans to invest £3 billion over the next 3 years, partly funded by cancelling the building of some planned free schools. Councils, who will receive the funding, have argued the money needs to be diverted to the right areas and to the people who know what is needed in their local communities. Nearly 1.7 million pupils receive support for SEND in schools in England, with numbers rising. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, said the investment would lay the groundwork for the SEND reforms announced in the White Paper next year. The government said it plans to cancel the building of 28 new mainstream free schools following a consultation, and that it is reviewing a further 16 sites. Councils will be able to use the money from the cancelled projects to adapt existing school buildings and create more specialist spaces. There are also 77 proposed special free schools which local authorities can decide to build. Conservatives have described the cancellation of some planned free schools as education vandalism. The Lib Dems welcomed the funding, but said it needed to be matched by ambitious reforms to diagnosis and support. The article also features comment from teachers' unions, local government representatives and SEND experts and can be found online. The Guardian reports that some GCSEs and A-levels in England could be taken on laptops by 2030. The Qualifications Authority Ofqual says it will launch a consultation lasting 3 months. Under the proposals, each of the 4 main exam boards will be invited to draw up 2 new on-screen exam specifications, targeting subjects with fewer than 100,000 entries, making GCSE Maths ineligible but GCSE German a contender. Concerns are already being raised around device access, cybersecurity, and the worry of tech failure. Ofqual has already said students will not be allowed to use their own devices, and schools would be able to choose between on-screen and paper versions. Sir Ian Buckham, the chief regulator at Ofqual, said he was not going gung-ho about the shift to online assessment. The regulator has said pen and paper would remain central to assessment and would not disappear. Research carried out by UCL and referenced in the article found students who use keyboards in exams got better test scores, including those with learning difficulties. Steve Rollett from the Confederations of School Trusts said, "School trusts recognise the potential benefits technology can bring to assessment, but it is vital that any changes are introduced carefully and with proper safeguards. More details in Guardian Online. Schools Week reported that one of the highest performing schools in the country has been successful at a too high cost for some pupils. This was the finding of a local child safeguarding practice review launched to investigate what it called widespread concerns regarding the implementation of the behaviour policy at the school in Hackney. It called on the school to ban staff from shouting at pupils after it found the practice had humiliated and intimidated youngsters. The school, ranked 7th in the country for Progress 8 in 2024 and rated outstanding by Ofsted in 2023. The head teacher of the school argued that parents would not agree with the findings because if they did, they would not entrust their children to the school's care. Sir Alan Wood, who led the review, said the paradox of outstanding results alongside deep distress can be explained by a culture that prioritises compliance and control above all else. His findings, he said, were based on a triangulation of evidence, including 342 reports from parents, pupils and staff. A letter to parents from the school's head teacher said they had taken the report seriously and urged parents to read the report in full rather than focusing on media headlines. Full details can be found online. The Guardian says that new research suggests that 1/4 of teenagers turn to AI chatbots for mental health support, as experts warn of the dangers this can pose. The research, covering the view of more than 11,000 young people, found that both victims and perpetrators of violence were markedly more likely to use AI for mental health support than other teenagers. Youth leaders say that children at risk need a human, not a bot. The results suggest chatbots are fulfilling demand unmet by conventional mental health services, which have long waiting lists and which some young users find lacking in empathy. The supposed privacy of the chatbot is another key factor in the increase in use, with users saying it feels like talking to a friend. Full details of the research and its findings and comment can be found online. Finally, the BBC also covers an AI story, as it says schools across the UK are trialling the use of what it calls deep-fake teachers to deliver lessons. The article says AI is becoming increasingly prevalent in schools, but government says AI has the power to transform education and improve teacher workload. The article features comments from pupils, parents and staff whose schools have trialled using AI and remote teachers to deliver lessons this year. Pros and cons are explored, with benefits including providing work for absent pupils and covering for ill staff. Downsides include a lack of emotional connection. More details on the BBC Technology News website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
Okay, welcome back. That was very interesting news about AI, wasn't it? Maybe I'll do another show about AI in the classroom. That sounds quite interesting. But let's get back to our topic today, which is about holding the line and teaching through term 2. Now, I've had a couple of questions, which I'm going to read out, and then I'm going to answer them with some of my experience of these. So the first one was, how do we mitigate Christmas countdown without turning lessons into glorified play sessions? And also, do leaders need to have more of an awareness and understanding about staff well-being in term 2? Well, talking about the mitigating the Christmas countdown without turning lessons into glorified play sessions, I think a lot of schools now, they kind of deal with this through the let's teach right to the end. Yes, there might be, the odd Christmas song on in the background, but I think generally that's how we do it, is we're teaching right to the end. We're doing full lessons right to the end. Certainly in secondary schools, I can only speak for secondary schools, I'm not a primary school teacher, but in secondary schools, we don't play games and we don't watch Christmas films. There might be something that if you've been doing something that you might, like a book or a novel, and you might want to show a clip from a film that's been made of that novel, etc. But we certainly don't turn it into those play sessions as such. It's more that we try and get each other through it through term 2. But what's the interesting question here is about the leaders. Should they have more knowledge and understanding or awareness of staff wellbeing in term 2, which I think is quite interesting, because the Teacher Wellbeing Index looked at support at work, and they had 53% of staff felt that employees who experience problems with their mental health and well-being are well supported by their organisation. And what's interesting about this is the senior leaders versus school teachers. So it says here that 61% of senior leaders say they felt supported, whereas there was 48% of school teachers said they felt supported or said that their colleagues were supported. Now that's down 2% on the 2024 index. So it's quite interesting, really. And I think leaders do know the struggles. And I think sometimes it's difficult because however long you've been in leadership, let's talk about senior leadership, not middle leadership. However long you've been in senior leadership, sometimes you can forget what it was like to be on a full teaching timetable. Now, I am a senior leader, but it wasn't that long ago that I was doing a full teaching timetable. So I remember clearly what this term was like when I had 5 period days back to back and had duty at break time, etc. And had to going to the bathroom all day and didn't drink water throughout the day, etc., etc. So I think, yes, leaders do know this, but they've got different pressures. And I think that's the difference here, is that on the outside, senior leaders look like they're not teaching as much. So therefore, sometimes, and not by everybody, but sometimes it can feel as if they're not doing a lot, depending on which school you're in and whether those senior leaders are out in the corridors and helping with students or on call, whatever it might be, and they're actually walking the corridors. But I think, leaders do understand what's happening with teachers, but I think they have a more strategic overview of the school. When you're a teacher, when I was a full-time teacher, and even when I was a lead practitioner before, so when I was a lead practitioner, I still had, 38 lessons over the 2 weeks. And I think it was less strategic. So I looked at the whole school, but only through the lens of my responsibilities. So I didn't see the whole thing. I didn't deal with governors, for example. I didn't do all of the parents' evening. I did the parents' evenings for the children that I taught in the year groups that I taught. I didn't go to all of the events that the school put on. I wasn't held accountable in the same way from the leaders in the actual mat itself. So it's a different type of pressure, and I think it's a different type of awareness of well-being. But I do think that there is an awareness of this, and we can't argue with some of the figures that are coming out on the well-being index. We can't argue with them. They're black and white, facts. We can't argue with those, but I think the difference is the perception of it. And, someone said to me before that actually you can have all these good intentions, but if the perception of your staff and your whole staff body is that they don't feel supported, then that becomes the reality and that becomes the truth. So if there is any disparity between well-being of teachers, then perhaps that's where to start, is to look at the perception of those teachers. But I think a lot of this comes with the culture of the school and the collective consistency and the teams that we're in and we manage. Because culture is protected not by policies, but by people. So that's how we protect our culture of our schools, is by the people that work in it. So for an example of this could be backing up colleagues publicly. So even if, that's certain for leaders, that's certainly true for leaders as well. So backing up staff in the face of challenges with students or parents or governors or whoever it might be, is backing those colleagues up publicly to show that you are a team. Applying expectations consistently across all classrooms, having that whole school behaviour policy to support everybody, and using shared language. I think shared language is probably the biggest thing that can help people really feel part of a team and having that collective consistency. When we all hold the line together, then students will stop testing us. If we're all saying the same thing and we're all going in the same direction, they will eventually give up. And when we all align, that's when your workload feels lighter. Even when it's actually not lighter, it just feels lighter when you've got people next to you, standing side by side with you and working with you and backing you up. And I think that's the thing with term 2. It's like a quiet drift, if you like. Term 1's very loud. We talk about systems, expectations, consistency, the culture of the school. We all arrive together. We're introducing new staff, some new students, etc. But term 2 is quieter. This is where I suppose the doors close a little bit more. The quick corridor chats just become nods. You walk past someone, you're too tired to say hello. Where the phrase, I'll just deal with it myself, kind of creeps in, and we kind of think, well, rather than ask somebody, everyone's really stressed, I'm just going to do it myself. And that's the debate I want to have with you, really. Is independence in term 2 strength, or is it the first sign of disconnection? Which I think is a really important discussion. It's quite a hard discussion to have, because I think of myself as quite a strong person, and I do deal with things myself. But if I was to do everything all by myself all the time, am I disconnecting myself with my team and my school? Because often it can feel very lonely being a teacher. It's your own classroom, your pupils, the behaviour of your pupils, it's your expectations, it's your results. But we know schools don't run on individuals. They run on collective consistency of everybody doing the same thing. So what do strong teams look like, especially in term 2? Let's have a look at the positives of this first, okay? Strong teams in term 2 don't suddenly become perfect. There isn't some magic wand and people are not tired anymore and don't magically, get more time out of whatever timetable they've got. But they do things very deliberately. They talk the same language or speak the same language, not just about behaviour policies, but about the pupils as well. We're using the same inclusive language. You will hear phrases such as, that's how we do it. Let's reset. Let's do this again. We're going to hold this line together. And they back each other up. You help each other. Even if you disagree privately with a colleague and how they dealt with a certain situation, publicly, you are together. You are strong. They don't undermine the consistency, because we've all heard this phrase. Oh, they behave for me. They're fine for me. Or, oh, I don't really bother with that behaviour system because I just think it's rubbish, so I'll just do my own thing. Or, I give them 2 or 3 warnings before I give them a detention. Because strong teams don't do those, because they understand something really important. Every inconsistency is a weight added to somebody else's workload. If you've been a teacher in that situation where you've received a class that has been with somebody else, where they have low expectations, where they're not holding the line, that's going to add to your lesson in terms of stress, baggage, behaviour issues. It's going to add to your workload. Not only that, strong teams notice when someone is struggling. And that's not because you've complained to anyone. It's because their patience is thin or anything like that. It's about the fact that they offer alignment rather than judgment. So a good team will kind of put their metaphorical arms around you, and they will help you in that quietness that you might have. They'll ask things like, how can I help this? Let's try this together. You're not carrying this alone. I can help you. We can help you. Let's look at this together. And I think, going back to the question about the staff well-being, I think this is fundamental, is the culture of that school, and the fact that if you're in a strong school where there is a strong leadership and there's strong teamwork, that's when things just seem a little bit lighter. You just feel like you can handle the day a bit better. But what happens when people don't pull together? So if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't sound like my school, this is where term 2 can hurt you a little bit. When teams don't come together, something subtle but damaging happens. and this is what I really want to talk about, because this is happening, and it is, in our schools now, lots of schools. The standards become personal instead of shared. Behaviour becomes inconsistent instead of predictable, and resentment quietly replaces the trust. Teachers start asking themselves, why am I the only one enforcing this? Why do I bother when other people don't? What is the actual point of me even being here? And the pupils, the students, notice straight away. They notice immediately. They learn who's going to let things slide. They learn which classrooms are calm and which are chaotic. They learn how to play the gaps between the adults. And that is the real danger. This is when teams can fragment and burnout accelerates. Not because the job suddenly got harder, but because support quietly disappeared. And that's really, really important. The support system that teachers thought they had, it starts to fade away. Isolation in teaching is rarely dramatic. It's not something big that happens and people flounce out of buildings. It looks like this: staying late alone. It looks like closing your door at break time or lunchtime and just coping with it, or crying on your own at your desk. It looks like thinking the struggle is a personal failure. And term 2 is long enough for that isolation to do real damage to people. And that's where we need to step in. So going back to this question about staff wellbeing, I think we all need to be much more aware of staff wellbeing. I think this is a team sport. This isn't a leadership sport. This is a team sport. We all need to be going in the same direction. Everything needs to be consistent. And those people that are not holding that line, they need to be held accountable, because it will just hang like a stone around your neck if you're constantly having to mop up after the teacher before you who just couldn't be bothered. So I think that's where leadership can help. That's where leadership can step in, and they can really look at and have those conversations with those staff members for the sake of the rest of the staff. Because if you are one of those teachers that is quietly struggling and sitting at your desk alone at lunchtime eating your corned beef sandwich or whatever it is you eat, and you're sitting there thinking, I don't know how much longer I can do this, then your team is failing you. And I think that's where we all need to be better. We all need to be putting those metaphorical arms around each other and offering, how can I help you? Let's look at this together. You're not carrying this alone. And sometimes just hearing those words is enough. But I think some of this is not just about, having those little conversations with one-to-one. It's not even about in the meetings that people have, like department meetings or anything like that. This sort of teamwork, this sort of support is built in corridors. It's built in transitions. It's built in calm responses. It isn't built in inset days. It's built on those, rainy Tuesday afternoons in November, in the 5-minute check-in conversations over a cup of tea, in how we speak about pupils when they're not there. That's really important. When the pupils can't hear us, how are we speaking about them? Collective consistency isn't about being identical. It's about being aligned. You're aligned together as a team, as a school, aligned in expectations, aligned in language, aligned in the belief that what we do together matters more than what we do alone. We can all be strong. We can all sit there and say, yes, I can just do this myself and get on with it. But actually, we need to believe in what we do together as a collective. Because when teams hold the line together, something powerful truly happens. Behaviour stabilises, workload feels lighter, and teachers remember that they're part of something bigger than just survival. So we're just going to have a few more ads before I close the show tonight. Stay with me, stay tuned. We'll just listen to these little sponsors.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Teachers, have you heard of Bet UK 2026? It's the world's biggest education and technology event, and it's completely free for educators. From keynote speakers and panel sessions to CPD accredited workshops and networking, Bet UK 2026 is where educators from across the globe come together to share ideas, spark inspiration, and find solutions that fuel our mission to drive better education globally. Get your free ticket today at betshow.com.
Okay, so just as I come into the closing of the show tonight, it's been wonderful to have so many people listening and offering their questions about why holding the line matters, why term 2 is so hard. What I want to close on is just thinking about that term 2 is not just about getting through it. We are laying the foundations for everything that follows. This term is about the middle ground. It's about embedding. It's embedding those routines, embedding, the behaviour policies, embedding the culture, making sure that we're working together as a team. Because, as I've said before, we need to be aligned. We need to be aligned as a team in your department, in your school, in your leadership teams. We need to show that we have that consistency and we are standing shoulder to shoulder, because the children will know if we're not. And they often do. They're very clever. Children are not silly. They are very, very clever. They know when people are not feeling their best. They know if you're a little bit cranky or you've woken up and you've got a bit of a sore headache and you're showing it. They know these things. They're children. They pick up really, really well. They're quite, even though, they might not have had a secure, frontal lobe yet, they are still knowing the world around them, and they pick up on things subconsciously. They feel it in the room and they feel it in your voice. So just to kind of sum up here before I end the show, term 3 only works if term 2 is held firm. So if you've done term 1 and then term 2 is a little bit ropey and you've kind of let things go a little bit, you're going to find term 3, when you come back in January, really hard. Because we haven't held the line in term 2. And I think it's so important, if we learn anything, when you're reflecting back on your term over the Christmas break and you're thinking, well, I've got that class and they're really chaotic, they're really hard to teach, and I need to find a way, is reflect on this. And we have to kind of have a little bit of accountability, because we are human and we do make mistakes. We are emotional beings. It doesn't mean that we're a failure or anything like that. It doesn't mean we failed at anything. It just means that we're aware of it. We recognise it and that we change it. Because if we keep doing the same thing in term 2 and it's not worked, and we do it again in term 3, it's still not going to work. Nothing's changed. You need to change what you're doing or how you're approaching things in order for it to work in term 3. Outcomes depend on what is sustained, not what is started. So if you sustain something over and you have those routines embedded and everybody's doing the same thing, that's when you start seeing real progress. Students remember the adults who stayed consistent, but they also remember the adults that stayed consistent with a smile on their face. There's lots of people in my school. In fact, there's one particular science teacher who every single term will get a card, get a present, get something from a child, even if it's just, a thank you, miss, I've really enjoyed your lessons. And she holds the line. She really does hold that line and have that true consistency in her classrooms. And she does it with a smile. But not only that, she's always on her door. She welcomes, she smiles when they come in. Then she might be, have that disciplinarian, authoritarian hat on when she's inside the classroom, or the science lab in her case. But when they leave, she's always smiling when they leave. Goodbye, have a nice day, hope you have a great evening, whatever it might be. And it's that consistency. Children like that. They like feeling safe. They like feeling the predictability of a teacher. So holding the line is not about resisting change. It is about protecting what works. I'd like to thank you for your calm professionalism that all of you, and myself, I'm going to thank myself as well, that we bring every day, especially on the days that we really are feeling not 100%. And even on the days when we feel that our worth, if you like, or our good work is going unnoticed. I can tell you, as a senior leader in a school, It does not go unnoticed. It does go noticed. So thank you for term 2. Thank you for holding your line, and for all the calm professionalism that you bring. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time on the show next month, back in January. Have a wonderful Christmas and New Year, and keep holding that line.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.